our process is we need to scoop coat our screens, all right? We need to take an emulsion, okay, and get it onto our screen, which is going to create the stencil for us. So I have a sample here of a screen, okay? This one is already coated, all right? It has that, this orange scoop coat on it, all right? That's the color of our stencil, all right? It is a liquid. It's in this container right here, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply it to the screen in a very, very thin layer, and that is what's going to hold the image and create the stencil to print your t-shirt design, okay? So let's first talk about the tools that we're gonna need. First, you're gonna need the emulsion, all right? It comes in this bucket, okay? It is light sensitive, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit here. You're gonna need a spatula, all right? The spatula is gonna be used to kind of clean up any of the drips and things like that. And then you're gonna need a scoop coater, all right? And this is the tool that you're gonna use to actually get the emulsion onto the screen, all right? So let's take a closer look at what these tools look like. So here is the scoop coater, okay? And I brought this in kind of close so you guys can see what this tool looks like, okay? Again, this is what we're gonna pour the emulsion. We're gonna pour the emulsion into the coater. We're gonna fill it up about 3/4 of the way, right? We want it down about a 1/2 inch from the top, okay? That's an appropriate level to coat the screen. If you don't put a lot in, if you just put a little tiny bit in the bottom, it's gonna be really hard to coat, because when you tilt this and you start getting it to pour out, it takes a really long time for it to come out, and you don't have an adequate amount of emulsion in the coater to give you a nice good coat. If you fill all the way to the top, right, it's gonna make a mess. It's gonna drip all over the place, and as you can see, look at the table. It's all over the place, right? So we wanna make sure we're about a 1/2 inch below the edge of the coater. That is what we're gonna call a full coater, all right? It's at the appropriate level. Again, the spatula here, the spatula is gonna be used for scraping up or cleaning any of the drips if you have any on the edges, okay? Sometimes you use it, sometimes you don't. It all depends on how you coat the screen, okay? And then lastly here, you have the bucket of emulsion. Now, this emulsion is light sensitive, okay? So if we were to open this up and take the lid off and leave it out in the open and let the light get down into the emulsion, it's going to change the chemistry, or basically expose the emulsion to light. The light is going to chemically change the emulsion, and it's going to harden, and it's not going to be light sensitive anymore. And then if we were to use it, you'd put it in the exposing unit, which will be in the next video. You're not going to get your image into the screen, okay? So we need to be careful when we're using this. We don't want to leave it out in the light. You fill your coater with the emulsion, right? You can't just leave this sitting out on the table out in the light. It'll go bad in about 15-20 minutes, okay? So it's not instant, but it's definitely, if it's forgotten about, it will be no good, okay? So let's look at this coater a little bit more in detail, okay? Now, the edge of our coater there's two edges. There's one here and there's one here. If you look, this edge is pretty round and pretty fat, okay? This edge is really thin and what I'm gonna call sharp, right? It's not sharp at all, okay? But it's much sharper than this edge, okay? Now, when we're using the coater, the reason why we have two different edges, it's for different types of screen mesh, all right? For the mesh that we use, which is 156 count, okay? And we'll talk about that a little later. But with that mesh that we're using, we need to use the thinner side or the sharper side, okay? That is going to give us the appropriate coat on the screen, all right? It'll give it the right thickness. It'll lay down nice and flat. It won't be too heavy. It's not gonna drip. It's gonna be exactly what we're looking for, okay? So again, you have to use the thinner or the sharper edge of the scoop coater when you coat your screens. Okay, so now that we know what the tools are that we're going to need to scoop our screen, let's take a look at what it looks like. Again, my coder is empty, all right, so I haven't loaded it yet, but I just wanted to kind of go through the motions with you so you could see how this is going to work, okay? Normally when we scoop coat our screens, we're doing it in the dark room, okay? And we do it under a yellow safe light, okay? The reason why I'm doing it out here is because you can't see in the dark room, okay? The camera just can't pick it up, it's too hard to see. So we're gonna do it out here in the lab, all right? But normally you would be in the dark room. So, with an empty coder here, like I said, I want to go through the motions with you to show you how this is going to work, okay? So let's pretend the coder is full, all right? And I make sure I'm using the right side of the coder. Again, I want to make sure that I'm putting the sharper edge against the screen, okay? The screen has two sides. We have the screen side, okay? And we have the frame side. Now, what's the difference? The frame side is you can actually see the frame, right? That's what's out here exposed to you, right? And then it steps in, and then you have the mesh. On the screen side, the screen goes all the way to the edge, right? It's on top of the frame. So that's why I call this the screen side or the t-shirt side, and this is the frame side or the ink side. So when we're on press, we put the ink inside the frame, okay? On the frame side. So we need to know that terminology, and because we need to figure out how many coats we need to put on each side, okay? So in our situation, what we do with the setup of our coder and the type of emulsion that we use, we do one coat on the ink side and we do two coats on the t-shirt side, okay? So let me repeat that. On the frame side or the ink side, we put one coat. On the t-shirt side or the screen side, we put two coats, okay? So when we do that, we're gonna apply one coat first to the frame side. We're then going to rotate the screen around, and we're going to then do two coats on the t-shirt side, okay? So let's run through the motions of what that looks like, okay? How do you hold the coder? You hold the coder in the middle, okay? You don't want to hold it on the end because then it wants to fall, all right? So in the middle is how you're going to hold it, okay? The frame, the screen then gets pushed against the coder, okay? So it'll be like this. I have my coder, I'm holding it in the middle. Notice my hands are holding on to the little ribs on the bottom, okay? My thumb is not hooked over the top, it's down below, okay? You want to stay away from the top side of the coder. This is wrong. Keep your thumb off the top. Hook it down underneath, and you can hold on to it that way, okay? So how this is going to work is you're going to start towards the bottom, and you're going to press the coder against the screen, okay? And you want to push a little bit, all right? You don't want to smash the coder through the mesh, but you want to definitely make a nice tight seal between the edge of the coder and the screen. What you're going to do then is you're going to rock the coder forward, okay? You're going to tip it up. And we're essentially going to kind of control spill the emulsion out, okay? So I'm going to rock it forward. I'm going to wait till the emulsion hits the screen, okay? It kind of comes at it like a wave. I'm going to wait till that hits. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go nice and smooth straight up towards the top. I'm going to stop with a couple inches left. If I rotate around, see I'm not all the way up to the top. I'm going to turn the coder back down so the emulsion spills back into the coder. Okay, it runs back into it. Then I'm going to come up and finish my coat towards the top of the frame, and then I can take my coder away. All right? If at any time my coder comes off of the screen, if I comes out a little bit, emulsion is going to spill all down my frame. It's going to go all over the table. It's going to make a mess, okay? So you really want to make sure when you push the coder against the screen that you hold it there and it stays nice and tight all the way through until you get towards the top and you rotate this down. Then you can come up and out, all right? If you get to the top and you don't turn it down and you keep it spilled and you go like this, it's going to, again, run down and make a mess all over the place, okay? The emulsion does not clean up very easily. It's very thick. It's kind of like honey, if you will, okay? It takes a long time to clean up. It's not fun. It's not easy. So again, we want to try and be as clean as possible, okay? So again, let's go one more time, and then we'll do it for real. I take the coater. My thinner side is going to be facing the mesh. I press that up against the screen. I tilt the coater forward until the emulsion hits the screen mesh. I come up nice and smooth, not fast. Again, I'm not like this. I'm not super slow-mo either, right? I'm nice and smooth. I stop with a couple inches left. I don't go all the way to the top. I turn the coater back down, let the emulsion run into the coater for 5-6 seconds, up finish it, and then out it comes, okay? So that's the step, that's the process. We're gonna load the coater now with emulsion, and then we're gonna start to scoop. Okay guys, let's get the coater loaded, all right? Again, we don't wanna fill the coater all the way to the top. We wanna come down about 1/2 inch from the top, okay? And that's gonna be a good adequate fill for our coater. Before we fill it, we wanna make sure that our coater is nice and clean. So again, run your hand through here and make sure that there's nothing in here that's going to get stuck to your screen and give you a bad coat, okay? So again, I'm just kind of wiping this out with my hands, making sure that there's nothing in here, okay? I'm also gonna check the edge that I'm going to use, okay? We wanna make sure that this edge is free of any type of dried emulsion, or we want to make sure that there's no dinks in it, okay? If this gets dropped on the ground and you get a little dent or a dink in the edge, that's going to give you a bad spot on your emulsion. So we want to just make sure that we don't have any of those. If you come across a coater that has a dent or something in it, just bring it to me and we can see if we can get it fixed. If not, then we're going to have to replace the coater and get a new one, okay? So again, we want to try and be very careful with the coaters. We don't want to drop them. We don't want to bang them on the table or bang them around, okay? We want to try and keep these edges as nice and as clean as we possibly can. Okay, my coater is clean. We're ready to go. Let's get some emulsion in it, okay? Now, the emulsion again is light sensitive, and you can see it's very thick, okay, in the bucket. All I'm going to do is just keep pouring, and I'm going to pour it in kind of side by side, or side to side, rather, until the coater gets full and I like it, okay? So here we go. Again, I'm just going to keep pouring it nice and slow and as carefully and as cleanly as I can. Okay, that's about good. I'll let that kind of drip in there for a second. I'm going to take my finger and wipe the excess off. This doesn't hurt your skin. I'm just going to kind of wipe it back into the bucket here. Okay, so I wipe the edge and put that back into the bucket. Now that I'm done, I need to make sure I put the lid on. Okay, so I put the lid back on the coater, tighten it down, and I'm ready to go. Okay, so now we're actually ready to scoop the screen, all right? So we have the coaters loaded with our emulsion. We have a cleaned and degreased screen, right? We cleaned it with the cotton pads. We've degreased it in the sink with the degreaser. It is dry, and we're now ready to get it coated with emulsion. So here we go. I'm gonna grab my coater, and again, I'm gonna hold it in the middle, right? I'm gonna hold it nice and in the middle. Again, I'm gonna make sure my sharper edge of the coater is up against the screen. I'm starting on the frame side because I'm going to put one coat on this side. So here we go. I'm going to push my coater against the screen at the bottom. I'm going to tilt it forward, wait till that emulsion touches the screen, and then I'm going to come up towards the top. Here I'm going to stop. I'm going to tilt the coater down, I'm gonna go up and out, okay? So there's a nice even coat of emulsion on the ink side or the frame side of the screen. I'm now gonna rotate the screen around to the opposite side, and I'm gonna do the same thing. But on this side, I'm going to add 2 coats, okay? So, again, I'm gonna start back at the bottom where I did on the other side. I'm gonna push it nice and tight, rock the coater forward until the emulsion hits the screen. Nice, smooth, fluid motion towards the top. Tilt the coater down, wait for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, up and out, okay? Again, when you're transitioning and moving from side to side and you're going from coat to coat, you want to make sure that this coater stays as level as possible. If you dip it down like that, you're going to spill emulsion all over the place and potentially all over you. If it gets on your clothes, it doesn't come out very easily, okay? So, last coat here on this side, down at the bottom again, start all over, tilt the coater forward, up, stop, tilt it down, up and out, okay? Notice I'm starting in the same position at the bottom and I'm stopping all the way at the same position at the top, okay? And I'm not going all the way off the edge of the screen. You want to make sure you stay below the frame on each side, okay? So again, 2 coats on the t-shirt side, 1 coat on the frame side. All right, guys, so now that we're done scooping our screen, we need to put this in the drying rack, okay? We have special cabinets in the back. They're all the way in the back over there, those 2 green stacked cabinets back there. What those are is it's a cabinet that runs warm, dry air through the cabinet and it dries the screens for us, okay? When we put these in the drying cabinet, we need to make sure that the screen side is down, okay? So again, frame side up, all right? We want that emulsion to drip or sag, if you will, towards the t-shirt side, okay? So since these are light sensitive, we got to get them in there right away, okay? And we have to keep them in there until we actually put them into the exposing unit, okay? So let's take a look at how this goes in the cabinet. So back here, we have 2. They're both the same, okay? The door is a quarter turn and then it opens. You'll find that we've got trays or slots in here. All you're going to do is pick one that's open. You'll slide your screen in. Okay, make sure it's nice and steady on the rack. Close the door. And if the drying cabinet is not on, all you have to do is flip the switch. The temperature is already set, that's preset, so you flip the switch. The cabinet will turn on, you'll hear the fan, the blower running, and in about 30 minutes your screen will be dry and ready to use for the next step. Okay guys, now that we've got our screen coated, we have 1 coat on the ink side or the frame side, and we have 2 coats on the t-shirt side. That screen is now put in the drying cabinet, it's drying, and now we need to clean up, okay? So when we clean up, we need to take all of the emulsion that's in the coater that's left over. This is still very good and it's reusable, okay? We're gonna put it back into the jar here. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna take the lid off, okay? Lid off, and now I'm going to use the spatula. I didn't need it when I was coating my screen. Sometimes you get a buildup on the edges where the side of the coater is running along there. Mine was really good, so I didn't need to use it, okay? But we definitely use it during cleanup, okay? So I'm gonna take my coater now, and you kind of want to carefully pour the emulsion back into the bucket. And all I'm gonna do is just kind of spill it over one of the corners here. And you can see it's starting to fall back into the jar, okay? And I'm gonna let it kind of do its thing here and spill out as much as it can. Now that it's, most of it has kind of come out, now I'm gonna start to use the spatula and scrape the remaining bit out of there. So again, I'm just gonna kind of help it down, and I can scrape it back into the jar. Okay, Again, being very careful that I'm not spilling. The goal here is to try and get as much of the emulsion back into the jar as possible, okay? There's really no reason to waste it, and using this spatula, it actually works really well at nicely scooping it out and getting it back into the bucket here, okay? So all I'm gonna do now is, it's not spilling out anymore. Now I just need to kind of scrape it. So I'm gonna change my angle here, and all I'm gonna do is just kind of scrape this out, okay? Put it back in. You can pretty much get, I would say, 95-98% of the emulsion out of here, okay? You just gotta dig the corner of the spatula into the little nooks and crannies, scrape that out of there. Again, you'll have a little bit when you're done, but we want to try and get as much out of here as we possibly can. Okay, clean this end frame. Okay, so this is the coater. You can see there's a little bit left in there, but not a lot, right? It's pretty much ready to go into the dip tank underneath the white sink, okay? All right, guys, now it's time to put the emulsion back in the refrigerator. The refrigerator is located right when you walk in the darkroom on your right-hand side. We store the emulsion in the refrigerator because it extends its shelf life at that colder temperature. So we'll put it right in here on the bottom shelf. Please make sure when you put the emulsion away that you make sure that the door is closed, okay? Thank you. Now we're over by the washout sink here. Now we need to get this into the dip tank for the scoop coaters, okay? So we're gonna put this in the dip tank. The solution is going to break up and dissolve the emulsion that's left over in the coater, and then we're gonna take it to the sink and rinse it, and we'll be really nice and clean, and we'll be ready to go, okay? So I'm gonna put this in the coater here. We're gonna use this bin right down here underneath the sink. So you're gonna lift up the bin, or the lid, you're gonna dip it into the solution, making sure that it's sinking all the way to the bottom, because if you just set it on top, it'll float like a boat. So I'm gonna curl it underneath, let it sink to the bottom. I'm gonna put the lid back on, okay? Again, while that's sitting in there for 3 or 4 minutes, we wanna make sure that we keep the lid closed so nothing else falls inside by mistake. So I'm gonna pull it out of the tank right now. Again, I'm gonna make sure that I spill out all of the extra water and solution back into the tank, okay? All right, so now we're here. I'm gonna bring it into the sink, and then I'm just gonna use the hose and I'm gonna rinse out all of the extra stuff that's in there. It should come out pretty easy because it's, again, been in the tank. The tank is loosening and softening all of that emulsion up, and it should rinse out and get nice and clean. If you have any stuff like stuck or tough spots, you may have to get in there and rub it with your fingers a little bit, but again, it's all gotta get taken out of there. Make sure you get into the corners, okay? In the corners of where the end frame and the bottom of the coater meet. You're always gonna get a little bit of a buildup in there. Again, just rub your fingers in there. It'll come right out. Make sure you rinse the back side. And then don't forget your spatula. Okay, so here we have our clean spatula and our clean coater, right? We've got all the emulsion out of it. It's wet now, so all we gotta do is just let it dry. What I like to do is I like to set the coaters in the sink in the darkroom, You can just like lean them up against the side and they'll dry overnight, and we'll get them put back into the cabinet. So if you do rinse them out in this sink, I would ask that you bring them back over there, put them in the sink over there and let them dry, and we'll be ready to go.